Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're going to be talking about what would happen if Deku was Yutas' reincarnation, aka if he basically just had his cursed energy. But, ladies and gentlemen, this video is going to be a bit different than my usual ones just because I straight up could not decide which path I wanted Deku to go on. I wanted him to be a hero and a villain at the same time, but not a vigilante. So I decided on a different course of action. Today, there's going to be two different timelines, and you, the community, are going to get to decide what happens. Are we going to get option A, Hero Deku, or option B, Villain Deku? Your guys' vote down below in the comments is going to matter so much. And remember, leave a like on the video because if not, I get very sad. So with all my yapping out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy. Hey Deku, what's this I hear about you taking the entrance exam at UA? You're even more pathetic than I thought if you think you have a chance at that. Seriously, Izuku's honestly delusional. I don't know what your mom puts in your breakfast, but Kachan's right, one of Bakugo's goons would say, as he would turn towards Izuku and smirk, followed by Bakugo, who would grab Izuku's notebook as he would read the title saying Hero Analysis. Bakugo at this moment would chuckle and say, looks like these are some pretty interesting notes. It just sucks you won't be needing them, so I guess I'll be taking care of them. Don't worry though, Deku. I'll make sure I put these to good use. As Bakugo would laugh in Deku's face, pretty much telling him that he's not getting his notebook back, and Izuku would try to reach over it saying, come on, please. I just want to fulfill my promise to And as Izuku would say that name, Bakugo would slam an explosion into Deku's chest as he would send him crashing onto the desk saying, don't say that damn name. As from here, one of Bakugo's goons would turn and say, Bakugo, chill out, you're gonna kill the kid. As it'd be at this point that Bakugo would say, nah, I say we should. After all, it's about time he learns a lesson. To keep his mouth shut, as he would smack his foot right into the face of Izuku, causing a little bit of blood to start trickling down, and grabbing him by the hair as he would ask him if he's gonna do anything about it, saying that she's not here to protect him anymore. As Izuku, looking up at Bakugo, would wince in pain as he's scared for the next explosion to come, but it never does. Bakugo would simply slam Izuku's head down onto the ground, as he would then walk away and say, you're not even worth it, you piece of garbage. But hey, if you really want to be a hero so bad, maybe you should take a swan dive off the roof and hope that in your next life, you'll be born with a quirk. You damn loser. As he would then go on to pretty much walk out of there, notebook in his hand, as Izuku threw tears and threw like a very messed up body, because this dude just got beat up, mind you. An explosion to the stomach, which damn near might have broken a rib, and then he proceeded to get kicked in the face by Bakugo full force, and we've seen that Bakugo without his quirk packs a mean punch. So Izuku, with blood going down his face, he would simply smash down on the ground with his fist as he would think, damn it, I can't do anything. No matter how much I try, Rika, I can't. I'm not strong enough to stand up to Bakugo, and I'm not strong enough to pass the entrance exam. I can't keep my promise. I can't keep doing this, Izuku would say as his voice would crack. Not gonna lie, I just went crazy on that. I started tearing up. I got into character. Anyways, moving on. Izuku at this point would go on to make his way towards the top of the roof building, as he would overlook everything, and seeing Bakugo and his goons walk off and seeing the beautiful sunset that was just about to go down, Izuku would think to himself that maybe this is for the best. After all, he won't be around to embarrass his mom, he won't be around to embarrass himself, and he won't be around to get in Bakugo's way. No one's gonna remember him after all. He's just a quirkless loser. But as Izuku would sit there, he would think to himself that he couldn't do this, right? No, he wouldn't. As Izuku would just have these thoughts, but suddenly Izuku would just remember an old childhood friend telling him to fulfill a promise, and Izuku would clench his fist as hard as he can as blood would start trickling down it, as he would think, I can't fulfill that promise, Rika. I'm sorry. As Izuku would close his eyes and breathe in one last time what he would believe would be his final breath of air, as Izuku would overlook the roof once more, think back to all of his previous memories of getting bullied, and really put his hands together as he would wish for a quirk in his next life. Izuku would jump off the building, and as he would do so, instant regret would fill his heart, as Izuku would realize that he just made the biggest mistake of his life. Izuku, however, knowing that there was no takebacks in this moment, would close his eyes and wince in pain as he would prepare for the sweet embrace of death, but it would never come. Izuku would seemingly be floating up into the air, not exactly understanding what was holding him up, but something was. And as Izuku would look up, he would see that something was holding him, a gigantic white claw. Izuku, seeing this, would begin to freak out, thinking that this thing was about to eat him, but this thing would suddenly let out in a weird scrunchy voice saying, "Don't do it, Deku," as in a very, very creepy, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I've seen the Jujutsu Kaisen Zero movie or whatever it was called, but Rika's voice would pretty much go crazy and tell Izuku not to do it. Now, it's at this moment where I'm going to flash us all the way back to Izuku and Bakugo's childhood to explain exactly how Rika's going to be involved in the story and how everything's going to be working in this specific timeline. Now, to be completely frank with you guys, my understanding of cursed energy is very lacking, but the direction that I wanted to actually take the story in is going to be a bit of a different one. I really love the way that Yutas' powers work, in essence of using Rika and only being able to use Zap. And so that's the only thing he's going to be having access to. He's not going to get a sword. He's not going to learn how to imbue cursed energy into things because Izuku himself is not exactly going to be having cursed energy. But before you click off the video, trust, right? The last 5 minutes have been good. I promise the rest of the story will be. And while I got you here, leave a like on the video, please. I've been gone for a while. It'll really help me out in the algorithm. Anyways, that being said, Izuku, seeing this gigantic arm, would start freaking out as Izuku would just like freak out and say, "What are you? Who are you?" As it would hear like a screechy voice tell him, "Izuku, you don't remember me? I'm Rika." And as Izuku would hear that, his face would turn into one of horror, as Izuku, seeing this thing standing in front of him, would think, "It can't be." But Izuku would think, "But it could." As Izuku would remember back to all of his times as a child, growing up alongside Kacchan and his best friend, his real best friend, Rika. When Izuku was a kid, in this specific timeline, I'm going to be introducing a new character to the story just for the purposes of Izuku's power, which is very, very essential to everything that's going to be going down, obviously, right? But as kids, Deku and Bakugo are both going to be having a friend that's a neighbor. Now, the parents obviously are going to be knowing Inko and Izuku's father, as well as Katsuki's family and stuff like that. And as kids, all three of them would hang out together. They'd be like a little trio. They were all really, really good friends, and Bakugo was always at the center of it, having all the attention, as Rika would always pay attention to him. And honestly, she used to really like Bakugo. As a kid, Deku had a huge crush on Rika, but he never did anything about it because, I mean, Bakugo also liked Rika. He was just too embarrassed to say anything about it, and Izuku knew that compared to Bakugo, well, he was just second fiddle. So Izuku never exactly pursued anything with Rika, and eventually, as they grew up a little bit more, it's not like he could have pursued anything considering they were like literally kids, like they were like 4, but Izuku's always kind of like looked at her and had like a little, little kid crush, Point is, after Bakugo would pretty much end up unlocking his quirk, which would be the explosions and stuff like that, Bakugo would start changing, becoming more of a real jerk, bullying kids, and Rika would quickly take note of that, starting to not exactly like tell Bakugo that he's not allowed to like be around them, but like distance herself from him more and more and hang out more and more with Izuku. This would lead Bakugo to getting really annoyed with Deku, and seeing as Izuku was, well, quirkless, Bakugo's incessant bullying on Izuku would not exactly be a rare occurrence in the story by any means necessary. And so, as Deku would be going to school, he'd be getting bullied by Bakugo more and more because of the fact that Bakugo was simply jealous of him, because Rika's attention was starting to be more on him every single day. But what Bakugo didn't realize is that he was doing it to himself. Rika liked the old Bakugo, the kind Bakugo. She liked the old Kanye, not the new Kanye, you know what I mean? Sorry, that was cringy. Anyways, yeah, she does not like this bully Bakugo version of him because she likes a sweet person, a nice person, a confident person. And so, as time would pass, Bakugo, yeah, he really does not like Deku. One day, however, after Rika has a feeling that Bakugo is doing that, she would sneak up on Bakugo doing exactly that, and seeing this take place, she would push Bakugo away saying, "Stop! You're gonna bully him just because he has no quirk? What's next? You're gonna start bullying people with weak quirks as well?" As Bakugo would look at Rika with an expression of like, "No, like I didn't mean to." As she would say, "I don't know when you became such a jerk, but I don't like you, Bakugo." As Bakugo hearing that was just kind of like, this dude has his whole world shattered in front of him. He was trying to put Izuku down to raise himself up, but in Rika's eyes, he was doing the exact opposite. And now, Bakugo had to look into Izuku's eyes, which had genuine, like, this dude felt sorry. He didn't even feel scared, he just felt sorry for Bakugo because they used to be such good friends, and Izuku, he missed that. Anyways, Rika would take Izuku's hand and run off, saying, "Come on, Izuku, let's go. We don't need to hang around him anymore." As they would go off and make their way towards a playground where she and Izuku would hang out. At this point, Rika and Bakugo would hang out less and less, but Bakugo would never stop having feelings for her. They would just grow more and more as he could see the kind of girl that she was becoming, and Bakugo was slowly starting to realize that he's into a girl that isn't strong, and he's been bullying people that aren't strong, but he just pushes that down, wanting to not exactly show that he likes Rika, but it was obvious to everyone but her. As time would pass, they would grow up, and eventually the three of them would all be 11. At this point in time, Izuku and Rika would both be at a playground where they would be hanging around, and Izuku would still be getting bullied by Kacchan whenever, she wasn't around. So Izuku would have a couple of explosion marks on him, and she'd ask him why he doesn't ever tell her about this. As Izuku would say, "Bakugo's not a bad guy, Rika. He's just what?" Rika would say, as Izuku would say, "Never mind. It's just because I should be able to handle things myself, After all, I should be the one defending you, right, Rika?" She would look at him and say, "It's not like that at all, Izuku. I don't mind defending you. Just because you're quirkless doesn't mean I think you're weak. But if other people do, then that's on them. You're one of the strongest people I know." As Izuku would hear that, his eyes would glow as he would stare at Rika and think, "Yeah, if she likes me, then I'll be fine." Izuku at this moment would almost tell her how she feels, as Rika would say, "Izuku, I admire you. I love how strong you are in the face of everything when things seem impossible. Bakugo might have a strong quirk, but you're a strong person." And she would then go on to explain that she loves his kindness, she loves his timid nature, and she would go on to say, "You know what, Izuku? One day when we're older, how about we promise to get married together?" Izuku hearing that would just get extremely flustered, his face going bright beet red, as Izuku would start holding his hands out in front of his face, covering himself, and Rika would smile, saying, "What's the matter? Never been asked out by a girl before?" As Izuku would say, "I've never even talked to any girls other than you." As she would say, "Well, that's good. Guess there's no competition." She would say, "What do you say, Izuku? Want to get married when we're older?" And you know what's crazy about this? Bakugo would have actually been around to overhear this, as he would grit his teeth and clench up his fist, waiting for Izuku's reply. Izuku, thinking about Bakugo, would look down, knowing that he has feelings for her, but in this moment, Izuku would look at Rika, and knowing that if he says no, he was going to regret it for the rest of his life, Izuku would say yes. As it'd be in this moment that Rika and him would go on to just smile and have a little, cute, fun play date at the park which they were at. It'd be at this moment that rustling would start to be heard from a distance, little explosions. They would begin getting closer and closer, and as Izuku and Rika were having fun on a swing set, out of nowhere, a gigantic beam would come flying towards that direction, as it would hit Rika spot on and kill her upon contact. This was way too strong for an 11-year-old girl to take, and Rika would be sent flying, crashing onto those monkey bars that are connected to the ground. The ones that are like a half a circle on the ground? Yeah, like the monkey, spider web monkey bar thingy-majiggers, right? She would die. And Izuku seeing this happen during the middle of a villain attack and that a hero was responsible for the actual blast itself. It wasn't the villain, it was a hero missing his attack, which actually ended up landing on Rika and killing her, unfortunately. Rika would be there on the ground bleeding out from her head, as the immediate contact with the monkey bars would have killed her. Izuku would rush over to Rika and say, "Rika! Rika!" You know, he lets out that like stereotypical like anime character cry. I would do it, I just don't think my voice could do that. But right after this would happen, Bakugo would come rushing in, as he would stand next to Rika, and both him and Bakugo would look at her as they would feel her pulse and feel that it was not there. Immediately a hospital would arrive, or the hospital, yeah, the medical ambulance thing would arrive, right? As it would put her on a stretcher, and on their way there, both of them would be there with their families, as Rika's parents would be there as well, and all of them would just be waiting for what's gonna happen. Is she alive? Is she okay? When is she gonna open her eyes again? Was she dead? Izuku would be thinking. Suddenly a doctor would come outside before shaking his head. Rika's parents would both fall into anguish, and Inko and Katsuki's mom would both start crying. Bakugo and Deku, however, they would both have different reactions. Instead of Bakugo having tears flowing down his face, he would feel nothing but anger, and turning towards Izuku, he would feel angry at the fact that Rika was even there in the first place, feeling really mad at himself, because if he had been man enough to tell Rika how he felt that day, they wouldn't have been in that situation, and Rika would have never even made that promise with Izuku. That's what caused him to falter. Bakugo blames himself for Rika's death, and he's never going to be able to make up for that mistake or get the feelings that he feels in his chest off of himself. He would stare at Izuku, and instead of embracing the fact that he really feels mad at himself, he would direct all of his anger at Izuku, as he would say, "It's your fault, Deku," and he would just walk off, as you'd pretty much just see Izuku sitting there crying into Inko's arms, saying, no, like it can't be, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a very emotional scene. But now flash forward, and after all these years, Bakugo's bullying wasn't just like the one that we get in the original, where he like threw an explosion at his desk, and that was probably the worst thing that's happened that whole time. Nah, his bullying was like way crazier. It was at least 2 if not 3 times worse than the one that we get in canon, which is why this version of Izuku was so much more willing to jump off that roof. His life had been made a living hell by Bakugo, and what's crazy is Bakugo felt just as much anguish as Izuku, but it was mental. All of Deku's was mental and physical. It was horrible, awful. Izuku hated thinking about Rika because it just brought back painful memories, and it reminded him of the fact that he was never going to have what he had wished could have happened with Rika. But with the backstory now finally being explained, we can now flash forward to Izuku staring at Rika as this memory would flash through his head, and Izuku would ask if she really is Rika. As one thing I forgot to mention was Rika's quirk, and this is the reason why Izuku's going to be having access to Rika. Rika had a quirk that pretty much allows her to essentially become a ghost. That was her quirk. She could astral project was her quirk name. And it essentially allowed her to fall unconscious in her humanoid state, sort of like Ino from Naruto, but her astral self, which couldn't actually make any contact with physical things, would pretty much like float outside of her, which was a really cool quirk because she could see everything around and like go explore and potentially be like a support type hero, which like surveys the area and stuff like that. She could float through buildings and stuff like that. But because of that quirk, at the moment of her death, Izuku, who actually was born with a quirk, but a curse quirk that pretty much allows him to curse people, he ended up using that quirk on Rika, which ultimately changed the nature of her quirk and made this grotesque thing that's now standing in front of him. This curse that he placed on her soul for as long as he was alive. Not for eternity, but for as long as he was alive, and the quirk was active. Its only use was once, and it could only activate upon death. So because this was the first time Izuku had seen death, it unfortunately activated on Rika. And because Rika loved him so much, that's what makes Rika so unbelievably powerful and is going to make her so busted in this series. Not to mention the fact that no one's going to be able to see her. It's going to be like fighting something in limbo, just like Madara's limbo clones that we get in the Naruto story. That said, not Naruto, but Deku is going to be making for a very busted character. After this would happen, we zoom back into Izuku and Rika as Izuku would say, "My God, Rika, look at what you've become. Are you okay? And Rika would say, I love you, Izuku. As at this point, Izuku would start crying and memories start flashing through his head once more. And seeing this, Rika, seeing that Izuku was sad, would just disappear. As Izuku, having been caught about 10 feet above the air, would then suddenly hit the ground. And he would feel a thud on his hips and stuff like that. Izuku would slowly get up. And because it was so late, he never ended up encountering the sludge villain. After this, however, he would make his way home and patch himself up before Inko could get home and see this. And then, Izuku would go right back to school the next day, as Izuku would have pretty much been trying to pretend like that wasn't real, like that hadn't happened, but he knew it was. Because at the corner of his eye in his room at night, he saw Rika, and when he woke up, he saw her floating behind him from his mirror. But seemingly, Izuku was the only one that could see her. But Izuku would have some sort of control over her by saying to please, stay hidden and not hurt anybody. So as Izuku went back to school the next day, Bakugo sees him and says, so, looks like you didn't take a swan dive off the roof after all. He would say, good, I get to keep using you as my punching bag. And he would walk by shoulder checking Izuku, as Rika would have appeared, not doing anything to Bakugo, but Izuku would look at her with a look of please don't, as Rika would pull her arm back and not do anything to Bakugo, and the rest of the day would play out. After this would happen, we would have a couple of months pass by as Deku would be getting bullied, and the bullying wouldn't be as crazy as it usually would have been if not Rika would have acted. He never got physical with Deku, but he made fun of him and he would shoulder check him and he would push him and stuff like that, but nothing that really hurt Izuku. One day, however, Bakugo was in an extra sour mood because in the morning his mom had been an extra bit of a douchebag to him and he had a lot on his plate this specific day. So Bakugo had planned to blow off some steam on Izuku and use him as his own personal punching bag. So as soon as lunchtime came around and Izuku was changing from PE class, Bakugo and his goons would walk into the room as they would say, well, if it isn't exactly the man we're looking for. Hey Deku, Bakugo would say as he would smile as an explosion would start to char Izuku's jacket, and Izuku seeing this would say, Bakugo, what now? As, he just looks down this entire time trying to, show Bakugo that he's not a threat and not retaliating in the slightest. As Bakugo would say, I'm in a really sour mood today, Deku. Lock the doors, he would tell both of his goons as the doors would be locked, and then Izuku would suddenly get punched in the stomach as he would fall down to his knees, and Bakugo would say, hold him up. It'd be at this point that Deku falling on his knees, he would start coughing as Izuku would say, you're pathetic, as he would kick him on the side of his ribs, sending Izuku crashing into the lockers, and one of them would pop open. Bakugo seeing this would smirk and would grab Izuku as he would start to actually shove him in the locker, with Izuku fighting against him, telling him to please stop, urging him to leave him alone with all of his might, screaming in a way that Bakugo was honestly kind of enjoying. But as Izuku would start screaming, suddenly a look of terror would come over his face as he was nearly shoved into the locker. It would be Rika, and Izuku would scream, Rika, no! As the screen would pan black and we would just see Izuku running from the high school as fast as he possibly could with his clothes covered in blood. Izuku had taken off his jacket and his jacket would have been covered in a bit of blood as Rika would have absolutely mauled Bakugo and the two students, ripping Bakugo in half the second that Bakugo finished shoving him into the locker, with Izuku crying as he's running away from the school and people seeing him but not really caring about him, seeing as Izuku was a nobody in everyone's eyes. Izuku having that terrifying experience happen to him and no Gojo or Jujutsu Kaisen world around to support him doesn't have the same resources Yuta did. And so Izuku just goes to his room and starts crying, hoping that no one finds out it was him, as he would think to himself, it wasn't me, it was Rika, I had nothing to do with it. Izuku would think, I'm just a quirkless kid, as he would sit in the corner crying. Suddenly his mom would come home as Izuku knows that he has to be quiet. Izuku would sneak under his bed as his mom had heard him crying in his room, but seeing that no one was there, she would say, weird, I could have sworn I heard Izuku. Izuku at this point would start crying under the bed as he would simply sob quietly, thinking why this was all happening to him, why Kachan died and why couldn't it have been him. as Izuku remembers that not only did he die, but his two goons did as well. Izuku knows Kacchan wasn't a good person, but not even he deserved to die like that. Izuku could just remember the screams that came out of Bakugo. And with the door to that locker being closed, no one was there. So Deku was there to witness all three of them get ripped to shreds, and he couldn't even do a thing about it. Rika, however, would tell him that she was only trying to protect him, and Izuku would be crying, pushing Rika away, saying, "You killed Bakugo," as Rika would say, "I hate Bakugo," in a screechy voice which would shake Izuku to his core, as Izuku would think that he hated him too, but he would quickly shake his head as he would think, no, he didn't hate Bakugo. He doesn't. He's his friend, he would think, but he would then realize, no, he wasn't. As Izuku's mind would start darting in all different kinds of directions, and suddenly Izuku would think that maybe he did truly hate Bakugo. Maybe that's why he feels so bad about killing him. His real self came out, and Izuku would pause for a second. His tears would finally start coming out as he would think, Bakugo's gone. No more bullying. No more goons. Finally, I could be a normal kid. Izuku at this point would go on to essentially go back to school the next day, as Izuku's normal personality would be switched for a quiet boy who now doesn't even speak. That experience definitely traumatized him, but Izuku's trying his best to move forward, not even caring about the entrance exam. That's not something that Izuku has in his own cards. Izuku knows he can't be a hero, not after what he just did. Not after the things that he had been thinking since he was a kid, that heroes are no good, and that heroes get in people's way and stuff like that. Because after Rika's death, Izuku had analyzed heroes to see whether they were true heroes or fake heroes, kind of adopting a similar ideology to that of Stain, but never acting on something like that, having wanted to act in it in a more similar way to All Might, where he was going to be the change to hero society. But this last experience was starting to very much so darken and turn Izuku into more of a somber person. This essentially would lead to Izuku, turning into a reserved kid with these ideals and this ideology of heroes are, twisted, and this power that he now has is feeding into that more and more. But ultimately, Izuku knows he's not going to do anything about it. After all, what's he going to do? Go and kill people with Rika? No, he couldn't. The thought of that made him want to vomit. But he would realize that he now has to pursue a normal life, get a job. And so, with the age being tweaked to 14 for the convenience of the story, we are now going to be getting a scene of Izuku searching for jobs, not wanting to go down the villainous route, but unfortunately for Izuku, and taking a page out of a series that I recently read. I completely forgot the name of it, but it's pretty much this series where Izuku is a villain and he becomes a villain through using nothing but his smarts. It's made by some person called My Head in the Clouds Not Coming Down or something like that. I'm taking heavy inspiration during this section. I forgot the name of the actual series, sorry about that, if the creator or someone who's seen that is watching this. But anyways, point being, Izuku would go and make his way towards these different fast food locations, which generally speaking is where most teenagers go to try to find their first job. This would lead Izuku to making his way towards McDonald's, Burger King, Jack in the Boxes, and stuff like that, but every single one of them would reject him. The moment that they would find out that he was quirkless, it was as if the prejudice just got, it was all there. You know what I mean? Nobody wanted to hire a quirkless loser like him. No matter how good his grades were, no matter how much free time he had, the kid with the quirk was always chosen ahead of him. And Izuku would start to get bitter, realizing that not only could he not fulfill his dream of becoming a hero anymore, having killed someone, he couldn't even be a normal person because this society was rejecting him. This would lead to Izuku looking up on Google quirkless jobs. It'd be at this point that one of the top links would be a Reddit saying jobs for quirkless people, as it would be a rant of other quirkless people pretty much saying that being quirkless genuinely sucks. Not only are you treated like garbage and people look down on you, but you can't even get a job. People practically segregate them and treat them as if they're garbage or something, like they have some sort of disease they have to stay away from, like they're gonna give them the quirkless or the cheese touch, you know what I mean? Izuku reading this would start reading a bunch of comments of different people who are quirkless, and he would see that he's not alone in the struggle of being a quirkless person. Not only that, but this would lead Izuku down a rabbit hole of just looking at a whole bunch of different little subsections of Reddit and stuff like that. And one of them would eventually be one by a user named Stain, not the hero killer, which would pretty much voice his frustration on hero society, how things have gone ever since, you know, like the last couple of years have been going, and how heroes are just becoming more and more fake, how they're all just in it for the money, and how they're not even doing their jobs right, you know, just ranting about fake heroes and stuff like that. This with the combination of Izuku at school having no friends, even the people who do talk to him not really like looking at Izuku like a normal person, because all of them just look at him as that weirdo that got bullied by Bakugo, and whenever they see him they kind of want someone to bully him just to feel like Bakugo's still there. So randomly people would actually bully Izuku that weren't even Kachan, just because people like honestly kind of miss Bakugo so much that anything that reminds them of him is something that most people do. And so Izuku would get bullied by other people that once before never used to pay any mind to him. He's getting rejected everywhere from normal society, and the more he looks into future career jobs, Izuku could realize that the quirklessness percentage of people who are actually hired is only like 10%, which, considering the fact that 80% of the population and there's 20% of them are quirkless, that means that Izuku has a 10% chance of not even getting hired. Like, he has a 10% chance of getting hired to any job, which already is like lower considering the fact that they're probably going to choose a quirk person. So realistically, let's make that 2%. Izuku's either going to be somebody who struggles financially, which is something he's realizing, or he's going to have no job at all. He's going to be stuck with his mom. And this would just bother Izuku to no end, realizing that this society has pretty much just cursed him, which is kind of funny considering the nature of his quirk. But regardless though, as this is all happening, Izuku, like I said, and what I'm pretty much trying to get to is things are making Izuku change, and very, very quickly. Eventually, Izuku would start diving into different subsections of Reddit, like more like dark web stuff, where Izuku would start looking into different things with people talking about specific fake heroes and articles popping up about certain heroes that, in Izuku's point of view, are complete garbage. And this is not something that like, oh, it's like from night to day. This takes place over the course of a bunch of months, which during all this time, Izuku realizing that he's been sitting here going, oh, this hero doesn't do their job right, and this hero doesn't do his job right. Izuku has actually started at this point to start taking things into his own hands, choosing that, yeah, he's not going to be a hero, but he wouldn't mind being a vigilante. And so, during the cover of night, Izuku would throw a hoodie on, and with Rika's help, he would go on his own night patrols, eventually seeing a couple of thugs trying to rob people and using Rika to essentially knock them out in a very, very gruesome way. Not killing them, but they get beat up very, very brutally, to say the least. There was, however, one case of a guy who actually tried to SA a woman, and Izuku seeing this and seeing that this woman actually kind of looked a little bit like Rika, thinking that she would have been sort of what Rika would have looked like as she got older because she had the same hair color and eye color, Izuku would get unbelievably angry as he would tell Rika to kill that man. And so as Izuku was just walking down the street, hoodie with his hands in his hoodie pockets, this man got ripped to shred mid like trying to grab onto this woman. And as that happened, the woman would have blood splatter on her as she'd scream, "Help!" And it'd be at this point that Izuku would simply smile as he knows that he saved her. But not only that, he got rid of some garbage. This would pretty much happen over the course of like 5-6 months, because it's 10 months. Let's take 6 months, because this is taking a while. You know what I mean? But anyways, after this would pretty much end up taking place, and Izuku like starts getting more and more bold with this use of Rika and understanding how to actually use Rika to his advantage, Izuku would start to, you know what I mean, like start to get cocky and confident. Not cocky and confident, but like bold. He would start to become more bold in his approaches and stuff like that, and start delving into different things. One of the things that Izuku specifically starts more looking into is the hero killer. News about that would fascinate Izuku, and Izuku would love what the hero killer's doing, taking out fake heroes. This would lead Izuku to wanting to do that himself, but knowing that killing a bunch of heroes isn't exactly going to do anything positive for him specifically, Izuku still has his reservations about that. That is, until Izuku would go on to find in the dark web pretty much a notice where someone is pretty much hiring to actually kill Mountain Lady. Izuku would end up contacting this person, making his way towards a public place like a McDonald's and connecting to their Wi-Fi and using a VPN and all that stuff. Which speaking of, this video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Talk more about that. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm not sponsored. Anyways, to continue forward with the story, Izuku would message this person and ask when he needs this done by, as this person would pretty much go on to say that this specific hero was not exactly paying their dues to be allowed to be a hero. And this specific hero would actually be he's a hero, but he's actually a villain, and this guy is getting too cocky. So this villain organization wants to get rid of him, and so they're just gonna hire somebody else so that it looks like someone else did it, not wanting to get their own hands dirty. And so Izuku seeing this and seeing that it paid pretty damn good, a grand total of $10,000 for this guy's head, Izuku would accept the job and ask if he knows where he's gonna be. And so they would explain to Izuku that he actually patrols in a specific area. And so Izuku, taking a bus ticket and skipping school this day, would pretty much make his way towards another city, as Izuku would make his way towards the area where this hero normally would patrol at. And as Izuku would sit at a let's say a boba tea shop, right? He's just sitting there, he's being very nice to the bartender waitress girl that's making him his boba. Izuku would take his his tea, sit down and start sipping on it, as in the street in the middle of the day, this dude would just get he would get pierced by claws seemingly, which would go through his chest as he would fall down onto the ground and start bleeding. And Izuku, using the Wi-Fi of this specific place in and of itself, because it was a little bit far from the situation, you would just hear screams, but Izuku, being inside of this place with his headphones on, would act like he didn't notice, as he would send a message saying it's done, and he would send the details to an account, as they would wire the money towards Izuku, but instead of actually being the 10k, they would actually only send him 5k, saying thanks kid, delete this contact. As Izuku, feeling a bit cheated at what just happened, he would be mad, but ultimately he understands that at least he got something out of it, and he knew he was taking scum off the street anyways, seeing as this guy was involved with a villain organization. This being the case, Izuku would just take the money and make his way back home, as Izuku would act just as scared as everybody else in the crowd, and he would even throw up seeing the actual devastation, seeing as this is not something that Izuku, this is something that Izuku quickly fakes to make it look like he has no idea what just happened. He would get on the train back home, and as soon as school would end, Izuku would make his way back home, as Inko would ask him, Inko would say, "Welcome home, Izuku." Izuku would look at her and say, "Hey mom, how are things going?" As Izuku, looking towards the kitchen table, would see a bill that says past due. Izuku, noticing this, would take the bill into his room and call the company, as he would pay it himself, and he would pretty much tell the company to just say that they're gonna be that she did make the payment, that they just didn't notice. And so they would do exactly that, and with Inko looking a whole lot less stressed, and her inviting Izuku to go out to eat. This would make Izuku feel a lot better about this, but he would realize that he can't exactly just lie to his mom. He's gonna have to say he has some sort of part-time job. And so, as Izuku's cover story, he would pretty much say that he's gonna be working at a place that's a bit far away, so that Inko won't have the the time, won't think, oh, let me go visit my son at work, like most parents probably would, or I feel like Inko would at the bare minimum, and at least my parents probably would at least once or twice. But yeah, that being the case, Izuku would say that he got offered an internship that pays decently. It's not crazy, but considering he's a student, they're paying him fair enough for his age, right? Inko would be extremely proud of Izuku and say, "See, things are already looking up for you. You got an internship. Maybe soon enough you could actually get a full-time job." As Izuku, hearing this, would think, maybe I could. A couple more months would pass as 2 would go by, and Izuku would continue cleaning the street off of, the city that he currently lives in, as villains would be very much so like unwilling to attack in that area or do anything, considering the fact that people literally just like go missing there. Like they'll just die or they'll get beat up by seemingly thin air. People would start talking about a random vigilante that's going around, and the heroes would be trying to capture it, but considering that they have no idea who they're after or what he looks like, they're not exactly going to be getting anything good. And every time that Izuku goes out in the cover of night, he's not looking like some suspicious hooded figure. Izuku looks like a kid making his way towards a convenience store and just looking like he's trying to buy some groceries or something like that, making his way towards the corner store. You know what I mean? Like, Izuku is not prime suspect number 1. But with that being the case, eventually more time would pass, and essentially Izuku would have ended up taking more and more of these little jobs to take certain people out, with Izuku becoming a bit of a hitman to make money whenever he really needs it. It's not something he's doing all the time. It's something he'll do, like once a month or something like that, to get money to, cover up his fake job story. Most of these jobs now would actually start paying anywhere upwards of 30k to even higher than that, 30 to 50k. So Izuku would pretty much be set with this stuff, and he would start to actually get himself a couple of nice things that he never would have thought he'd be able to afford before. As Izuku taking out more and more people would actually start to be a very recognizable person in the space, until one day, about 1 week before the entrance exam would actually take place, or those events would happen, Izuku would actually end up getting message from a private customer, which would essentially end up telling him that he's going to be getting paid big money to kill a big time pro hero. Izuku, seeing this, would wonder who exactly he's going to be having to kill, and then they would finally message him saying that they need him to kill Mount Lady. Izuku, reading this, would think to himself that there's no way he's going to be killing a top 100 hero, is he? Plus, she's new, she can't be that bad. But Izuku, realizing that this hero is one of those that loves to be in the limelight and is not really worth the squeeze, he would decide that he's ultimately going to be taking the job, considering that since it is such a high level hero, they're not offering him 10,000 or 100,000. They're offering this dude like 650,000 to get rid of her. As Izuku, seeing that amount of cash, he just couldn't pass it up. Izuku, having now slowly begun to embrace this lifestyle, first saying he would never kill a hero, but now he's getting to a point where, like I said, he's just getting more and more bold. That being the case, Izuku would make his way towards where he knew this hero would be at, approximately 3 days from now, which would be a pro hero meetup where Mount Lady was actually scheduled to meet a bunch of fans and sign autographs and stuff like that. And as Izuku made his way there, Izuku would simply scoff, thinking, why are you here when you could be out there saving lives? Anyways, as Mount Lady would be shaking the hand of another person there, Mount Lady would start waving as she would pretty much be done and would be about ready to, go backstage. Mount Lady, switching to her point of view, would simply have just been thinking to herself that she's exhausted and she's tired of shaking these creeps' hands, considering that most of her fans were men, boys, and, man-childs, you know what I mean? So yeah, she was not exactly having the best day of her life, but she was faking a smile. And Izuku, seeing, what was her name again? I was about to say Midnight, but that's not it. Mount Lady began to walk away. Izuku would realize that now's the moment. He's gonna kill her in front of everybody. As Mount Lady was making her way towards there, suddenly claws would tear an arm off, as she would look towards it and wonder what the heck that was, like screaming out in pain. People would scream in the audience as they would all run away, and Izuku would run as well, making it seem as if, he was just part of that. As Mount Lady would be ripped to shreds. I know I keep saying that, but I can't preface that enough. Like, imagine this gigantic thing just clawing you and just tearing into your skin, or again straight ripping out, having the capacity to straight up rip you in half with the swing if he wanted to. And that's exactly what would happen. Mount Lady's blood would splatter on everyone from the first row to the third row, and they would scream as Mount Lady's body would hit the ground, and you couldn't even recognize that it was a woman by the time Rika was done with her. Izuku would walk away, and finally, being a good distance away, Izuku would smirk as Izuku would realize that finally he had taken out a hero that was in the top 100 heroes in Japan. And this made Izuku feel very confident and extremely cocky in his new abilities. Izuku had practically embraced Rika, and Izuku was turning into a completely different person. After Izuku kills Mount Lady, people start talking about him. And I mean it, people start talking about this, and it's like a big freaking deal considering the fact that there's not many people who can genuinely kill a pro hero and not be seen, like do work that clean. And people genuinely start wondering if this guy is gonna be like super legit. But there is also people like in the community that are like evil and villains and stuff like that that start saying that they don't even know what this guy looks like and stuff like that. Like, he's killed Mount Lady, you know, who wasn't expecting it. How will he perform if there's a hero that's actually on duty? And so Izuku seeing like all the praise, it would have like lifted him up, and this dude would have been feeling like he was the man after this, right? Like, even though Izuku at this point feels like a bit of like, dude, like I just killed a pro hero, because that's still there, mind you. It's like a little voice in the back of his head, but he's suppressed it because he's decided this is the route he's gonna go down. Like, he doesn't care at this point, right? Because it's like, why would he? The world has treated him like garbage, so now it's his turn to get back at the world. Kind of corny sounding, but literally, like, that's exactly what's going on. Anyways, what ends up taking place after this would be Izuku waiting for the next offer to be something big, when suddenly somebody would finally contact him. Mind you, Izuku gets flooded with messages, at least like 10 a day, of people asking him to take out this person, but the amount of money they're offering just isn't high enough for what Deku's, you know, doing. It's not worth it for him at that point. And so Izuku, most of the times, taking his money, he'll just go on a train and go to a different city and not be a vigilante, but straight up just like just enjoy life, like get himself nice food and go out and actually go to the gym. Like, that's what Izuku mainly does, because Izuku understands, like, if he ever gets into a situation where like he needs like his own physical strength to fight, he's gonna need to be strong. So Izuku would go through that, would start slowly going through that same All Might transformation at the gym and with the diet and all that stuff. And you know, he's actually starting to like become a cooler, more confident person. People start seeing it at school. He doesn't change. He acts as though he's the same like scared Izuku. And when people bully him, Izuku just tells Rika not to kill them. That if someone ever takes it too far, he personally wants to be the one to do it. And he wants to make sure they know it's him. So Rika, because, you know, no one's like going crazy with Izuku, they're like verbally messing with him and pushing him around, but that's like the worst of it, you know what I mean? And as time passes, it slowly starts dwindling away. People have like sort of accepted Bakugo's death. Even at Bakugo's funeral, Deku was there, and like he didn't really know what to feel at the time, but now Izuku's just glad Bakugo's dead. He couldn't be more happy. In fact, Izuku wishes he had killed him sooner when he got Rika. But that being the case, after this would happen, like I said, Izuku would finally get the job that he's been waiting for, to kill another top 100 hero. And this specific hero would be... who's a hero that might be someone interesting? Ah, I got it. Sir Night-Eye. Yup, Sir Night-Eye. That's the hero that Izuku's gonna be going after. Now, there's two specific reasons why that name actually came to mind. Mind you, I want to tell you guys something right now. Like, I didn't really script this video. I just kind of like put down like maybe like a couple of plot points for like the first 10 minutes. But other than that, I've just kind of been going off the dome. There's two reasons why I thought Sir Night-Eye. One, because Sir Night-Eye can see the future, so he might know his death is coming. And two, he's like a top 100 hero, plus the person that could hire him makes sense, the Yakuza family. Overhaul has access to the money to hire someone like Izuku. And so Izuku being contacted by the Yakuza family, who Izuku is very aware of after having scoured the internet and, you know, keeping up with the villain side of things, Izuku would essentially make his way towards Sir Night-Eye's agency. And because Sir Night-Eye can see the future, he knows he's gonna die today. So even though Sir Night-Eye is under the assumption that fate can't be changed and that things stay as they are, heroes are gonna be there by Sir Night-Eye to watch, like, as things happen, to like try to protect him. He's practically under the witness protection program, and Sir Night-Eye knows that he gets caught at his own at his own agency. So we got people like Mirio there, we got Eraserhead there, to erase quirks and whatnot. We got Endeavor there, who's actually there to lend him a hand. We got Best Genius, like all these like top tier pro heroes are there, ready to give their assistance to Sir Night to make sure that he can continue being a hero. We've got like Gran Torino there, and All Might's the only one that doesn't actually end up showing up, just because of the way that things ended off. You know what I mean? And Sir Night personally, like he doesn't need All Might there, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't want All Might to get caught in the crossfires and potentially get injured and stuff like that. So yeah, All Might's not going to be there, but Izuku simply being near the agency is more than enough for Rika to be summoned and essentially make her way into the agency, being able to just go through the walls. Like this version of Rika can literally just go through physical objects, because like not only can it not be seen, but it can straight up just go through things like a ghost, due to the nature of the quirk that Rika had previously. And mind you, the reason I'm buffing Rika a little bit more is because, mind you, this dude does not actually have cursed energy this time around, so you know, it kind of makes sense. But the point is, Izuku would have Rika enter the building and just simply phase through every other hero until finally Rika would be face to face with Sir Night-Eye, who, knowing that a strike would come which would ultimately kill him, would jump back, as Rika, seeing that Sir Night-Eye dodged him just due to the fact that he had future sight, would actually have to like lunge towards the direction of Sir Night-Eye, as the heroes would get in the way. And even though the heroes can't see anything, they hear a screech as Rika lets out a roar, and the heroes hear that. They try to like defend Sir Night-Eye, all circling around him, but Rika proceeds to actually like smack them away, and with them not knowing where Rika's coming from and only Sir Night-Eye being the case, he pretty much screams from the left, but they're unable to do anything about it, as Rika would hit them away, and Sir Night-Eye, like Rika actually full on trying to kill him, like not caring about what scene she makes, would just skewer Sir Night-Eye, as Sir Night-Eye would see himself get skewered like a kebab, and this dude just sees like his stomach just like pierce through, as Sir Night-Eye falls onto the ground, and Mirio, like trying to like phase his abilities to maybe see this thing or something, he's unable to do anything. Mirio comes to Sir Night-Eye's aid as he catches him and, you know, like asks him like, Sir Night-Eye, are you okay? But Sir Night-Eye just like, he fades. Like this man can say a couple last words, but he just, his eyes close. And as Izuku has that finally happen, like literally being nearby, Izuku would just like see a bunch of cops and stuff like that. And you know, like this dude is, mind you, he's just in a coffee shop, as he would text the you know, the Yakuza family, Overhaul. He would be like, it's done, and Overhaul would say that he'll pay him the money when this has been confirmed, as Izuku would simply send like a thumbs up emoji back, as like weeks would pass, mind you, and word of this would, or not weeks but days would pass, mind you, because it was a couple of days before the entrance exam, and then like a couple more days passed, which was like about a week, and then this is when this is happening, and the events of the UA Sports Festival, or USJ, are about to take place for the actual like My Hero students in the actual like My Hero Academia, right? And so this is happening like literally prior to that, but like maybe like 2 days before that. Like today the students were doing the heroes versus villains, and All Might was over there training them, when suddenly All Might gets a message telling him that Sir Night-Eye has died, as All Might, knowing that that could have happened today, still wasn't prepared for that, and he would feel bad at the fact that he wasn't there for his friend, but ultimately All Might couldn't have done anything even if he was there. Rika's stronger than All Might himself. That being the case, what ends up happening is that the heroes would keep this under wraps for a bit, as eventually they can't keep it hidden anymore, and after a couple of like of days would pass, honestly I did say weeks, but like Izuku, yeah, weeks would pass. Izuku's not going to be getting paid for a while. Izuku would pretty much just remain in the shadows, not doing anything, knowing that if he continues being more bold, he might eventually get caught and people might be on to him, and that's the last thing Izuku wants. He's known for never having been seen or nothing of those lines. But suddenly, Izuku would be messaged by a certain organization days later, which would be the League of Villains, after having failed to capture All Might, and or not capture him but kill him, due to, you know, like what ends up happening in the USJ, because of the fact okay, I need to seriously rethink my words because I'm over here confusing myself. To clarify, at this current moment, All Might was at the USJ attack, but it went by a whole lot different than the original because of 2, maybe 3 reasons. 1, Izuku's not there. 2, Bakugo's not there. And those 2 things being the case mean that at the USJ, Aizawa might straight up die. Like, without Izuku jumping in to actually try to save him or something like that, maybe you could say Todoroki would do so, but I don't think he could get there in time. I think Aizawa might straight up get killed by the Nomu, which is like a big blow to the heroes, and they're gonna lose their homeroom teacher, which is like a big deal. But after that happens, students are going to get injured way worse than the original because of the fact, would they? I mean, maybe Todoroki would get injured pretty badly during this fight and like hospitalized or something like that. But other than that, All Might would still end up facing off against the Nomu, and realizing that Aizawa died to this like league of villains, he locks in and defeats the Nomu as fast as possible, shocking Shigaraki, who says, "You're supposed to be weakened." You know, like he's stunned at the fact that All Might can even move like this after everything that he was told by All For One. After this happens, I'm not sure if I said it yet or not because I'm recording this about 2 hours later. I went on a Chick-fil-A run, and just saying, I got down. I ate a 30-count nugget meal with a large fry and another large fry on the side, as well as like, I think it was like 6 or 5 Chick-fil-A barbecue sauces. It was incredible. Okay, I'm completely getting off track. Sorry, it's because I took a break and now my mind is all scatterbrained. But getting back into the story, what pretty much ends up happening after the defeat of the League of Villains is All For One would end up deciding to recruit the help of another person. Now, we already know that the League of Villains are not opposed to recruiting other people to help their cause. I mean, we saw this with the hero killer Stain when he was making a whole like big news and stuff like that. And obviously we still do have the hero killer Stain being one of the persons that the heroes but the villains definitely want on their side. But with Deku's ability to take out not only like sidekicks and small time heroes, but this dude is taking out 3 actually solid top 100 heroes already. So just off of that, Deku already in this series has the pedigree to be contacted by somebody like All For One. And I could see this happening very easily with All For One knowing that this first attack on All Might most likely wasn't going to be successful. So him having a huge pull in the underground, I mean, it's insane. If you guys have seen My Hero Academia, which I'm assuming you have, All Might consistently talks about how much of a big deal All For One is in the underground world, like in the villain world and stuff like that, and how people thought he was a myth, people thought he was a legend and stuff like that. Deku is starting to make a name for himself among villains. Like, this dude is not unheard of. This dude is now becoming popular, even though nobody has ever seen him yet. And this is exactly why I think it's going to be such an interesting moment for the League of Villains to contact Izuku, and for All For One specifically to be the one to reach out to Izuku personally. Now, the reason that I think that this has to happen in order for this to even work in the first place is because of 2 things. A, I've already sort of established that this version of Izuku is a very calculated, methodical killer. And he's going down the route of like I want to say Riddler type of character, where his motivations are kind of different, I guess is the word I'm looking for. He's not your average Saiyan warrior, sorry. But yeah, his motivations are a bit strange in the sense that he's going after, at first, he was going after taking out, like helping out and being a vigilante. Then he started changing after killing a couple of people. And then he didn't mind killing for money, seeing as he knew he wasn't exactly going to be getting a high paying job. So he decided, hey, let me become a contracted killer or a hitman, is how Izuku saw himself. But now Izuku is pretty much seeing himself as a full-fledged villain, and seeing as Izuku went on these crazy like Reddit, dark web, internet searches where he found all this crazy stuff out, I don't think it's extremely far-fetched for Izuku to have eventually ran into something about the leader of the underworld, All For One. So when Izuku would get contacted, Izuku would actually be contacted by said All For One. And Izuku seeing this would think that it's a joke, being like, of course, somebody made a fake profile and is contacting me. But no, it's the real deal. It's the All For One. And it would not be a message, it would be a full-fledged video where All For One would pretty much have Dr. Urodaki, or no, not Urodaki, that's Tanjiro's master. The doctor, the guy who pretty much ended up telling Deku, yeah, it's not happening, kid, him. He ends up recording a video for All For One, as All For One would, on some like stereotypical villain type stuff, would introduce himself as All For One, one of the strongest people in the world, pretty much saying that he personally wanted to request his help in the killing of All Might. Which, once Izuku would hear this would leave him visibly shaken up, as he would realize that he hadn't thought that far ahead. He never realized that one day he genuinely could come face to face with his hero, All Might, one of the only persons that he considered a true hero. But regardless of that, Izuku would have to shake it off, as All For One would continue saying that he wanted to also invite him to destroy the band-aid that Hero Society has placed over their world, saying that nowadays there's a bunch of fake heroes and there's a bunch of this and that. He pretty much just appeals to what he thinks Izuku is into, and All For One is a genius. This man proceeds to play right into what Deku's thinking, right into what he's feeling, which essentially leads Izuku to responding back with a simple, I'm interested. As after this would take place, Izuku and All For One would remain in contact for a couple of weeks, with Izuku not immediately being like, oh, I'm just gonna join this guy. You know, Izuku is his own man. You know what I mean? He's not just gonna go and jump on All For One's, coattails and be like, oh, I want to join the League of Villains. So we'd get a section of time in which, after this happens, we'd get the UA Sports Festival. I can definitely see Todoroki winning it this time around without Izuku making him hold back against Bakugo, considering that there's no Bakugo. I completely forgot that. So yeah, no, Todoroki would easily stomp out the entirety of the competition. I think that because Bakugo doesn't fight Tokiyami, the final fight would probably be Tokiyami versus Todoroki, and that's just a fight that I can easily see him winning. Also, not to mention that Shinso might even make it to like really far into the UA Sports Festival. Without an anomaly and a freak like Izuku there who had access to One For All, Shinso probably would have made it to the finals and lost only due to the fact that his secret, like the secret to his quirk, was fully gone. That being the case though, Todoroki would still win, like I said, and after this would take place, we would then suddenly get the event of the... What else ended up taking place? Oh yeah, the Pro Hero internship. I can still 100% see Ida pretty much trying to do the whole thing where he confronts the hero killer Stain, but much like in the original, this just doesn't work. And so as this is happening, we're now going to cut back to Izuku, who's currently at a coffee shop. Now I'm going to switch more to a one-person type of approach. Give me a second, I need to sneeze. My bad. Can I get a bless you in the comments, please? Anyways, continuing forward with the video, what pretty much ends up taking place is we would get Izuku sitting down at a little coffee shop, which has become quickly one of Izuku's favorite thing to do. Right now, he's simply looking for a job, not because he really needs the money, but because Izuku honestly just wants the thrill of a good kill. So Izuku was going through his things, trying to see if there was anyone specifically he wouldn't really mind killing too much. It'd be at this point that somebody would come by looking like a really big, like bulky, like muscle head, like a meathead. This dude had like a muscle quirk, and he had like a girl right next to him. He was walking by and he was too busy flirting to notice, as he would spill his stuff all over Izuku and his laptop. This would cause Izuku's laptop to instantly get fried, as Izuku would look up towards the direction of the man and just give him a stare of, what the heck do you think you're doing? You know what I mean? As the guy seeing this would quickly like look at him and say, you got a problem, twerp? As Izuku would smile at him and say, no problem at all. Sorry, it was probably just an accident, right? As the guy would look at him and say, as he would wipe off his shirt and say, yeah, that's right, kid. Well, Seems to me like I had you all wrong. Sorry about that. As he would go in and let Izuku sit back down and not pay for anything or be like, oh, let me get your dry cleaning or let me pay to fix your laptop. None of that stuff. Mind you, had he done that, Izuku might have even let him off the hook, but he didn't. So as the guy was leaving the coffee shop and making his way out on the street, I don't know, man, a car just came flying at him, which Rika 100% threw at him. A car got picked up and crushed not only him, but his girlfriend. And as that happened, Izuku was sitting there thinking, that's some good coffee. As Izuku would get up, leave his money on the table and say, hey, thanks, as he would thank his barkeep and pretty much end up walking on out of there. Seeing that the guy had pretty much been crushed by a car, Izuku would fake being completely shocked and scared as he would say, wow, villain attacks sure are getting out of hands nowadays. Suddenly a random person on the street would walk over towards him and she would say, yeah, it's been getting really crazy lately, especially with the Phantom Killer out there. I just made that name up. What do you guys think? Yeah, definitely. Izuku would say as he would turn back only to see Uraraka staring at him with her brown hair, brown eyes, and those pink rosy cheeks. Izuku seeing that would actually get a bit of a flashback to Rika, because I kind of forgot what Rika looked like in the actual Jujutsu Kaisen 0 movie or whatever the heck it was, but we're gonna be saying that she kind of looked like Uraraka but with black hair and her eyes were different, but like she had like a rounder face, which is why Izuku could kind of see Uraraka in her. Izuku seeing her would just kind of like blush for a second as he would like snap back into what he's normally like. Mind you, this version of Izuku is a lot more muscular because he's had a couple of months to train and stuff, and he's been grinding his butt off, to say the least. His confidence has gone up like a truck. But yeah, that being said, as this happens, Izuku opens the door for her. She walks inside staring. It's looking sad as Izuku feels bad that he did that to her day, but ultimately Izuku would walk off, put his hands in his pocket and say, what am I doing? That's not Rika. As he would begin walking home, and once he would enter the house, he would just hear, hey Izuku, you're home earlier from work. As Izuku would say, yeah, I wasn't really busy today and I didn't have much to do, so they told me I could come back home. From here, his mom would say, that's great, mind joining me for some dinner? As Izuku would say, I'd love to, Mom. From here, the both of them would make their way towards somewhere to eat, and on their way there would actually be a villain attack, which would actually cause a huge traffic stop. Izuku, knowing that like his mom has to go to sleep early, like she has work the next day, and this villain and hero are getting in the way of everything, Izuku would proceed to just straight up tell Rika to take care of it. To which blood would just splatter all over the pavement, and it wouldn't just be the villain, it's the hero as well. Izuku being in his car with his mother quickly, like this could have easily turned into like a 10-minute plus and then the cleanup and stuff like that, but instead Rika would have ended up smacking not only like the heroes and the hero and the villain dead, but she would have actually also smacked away the little traffic cones and all the little rails and stuff, which perfectly opened up the road, leading the flow of traffic to continue going, as everyone's just like, what happened? Mind you, as that happened, the cars weren't there. Like, you know how when there's an accident, cars will just start driving really slowly? Nah, they all just peel off. So Izuku and Inko, they make their way towards their restaurant where they go in and they honestly have a great dinner. For the first time in months, Deku gets to be a normal person again, a normal kid again. He gets to enjoy a warm meal that his mom paid for them. And Izuku, he doesn't really know how to feel, right? Because on the one hand, yes, he's a villain, but he's not a monster, at least not fully one, he thinks. And seeing his mom there and knowing that the stuff that he's doing would just break her heart, Izuku couldn't help but just feel terrible. At this point in time, Izuku would even think to himself that maybe he should just call it quits already. Quit while he's ahead, right? He doesn't need to work. He can tell his mom, not the truth, but he could just tell her that he has a different job and maybe move somewhere close where she won't even have to really be involved in any of that. Izuku could even lie to her and say he has some sort of online stock portfolio and it's doing really well or something like that. He would begin thinking of that, and ultimately his mom would drop the money on the money on the table as she would tell Izuku that they're off, as Izuku would look at her and say, right, mom, sorry. They'd make their way home, and Inka would actually notice that Izuku looks a lot more muscular. She'd say, you've been working out, Izuku? As Izuku would turn towards her and say, yeah, thanks for noticing, mom. It'd be at this point that they'd make their way home, and Izuku would just stay there. Like just laying there in his bed at night thinking to himself what the heck he should do. He would just think to himself like he's in way too deep. Like he doesn't feel like he could go back. The Izuku that once was there is not there anymore. He died the day that he decided to jump off the roof and someone else took his place. And as corny as that sounds, Izuku truly does feel that way. But my bad. I low-key just sneezed straight into the mic. Sorry about that. But with that being the case, Izuku would ultimately decide that whatever happens, happens, and maybe he could get one more score in before he hangs up his the towel. As Izuku the very next day would go to quote-unquote work, right? But really, he would... Hold on. Dude, allergies, man. Allergies. You see how much I love you guys? I just got back from a full day of flight yesterday, and today I just instantly got right back to making videos for you guys. Leave a like on the video for that. I've been gone on a Mexico trip. For those of you that have been wondering like why I haven't been uploading as much as I probably should have, yeah, I've been on a Mexico trip. Oh, one more thing. For those of you guys that have been begging for Naruto content, trust me, it is coming. I am working on a Naruto video, a very, very long one, mind you. It's not going to be on my channel, but it is going to have me featured in it majorly. It's like a 3-hour video. You guys are going to love it. It's going to be insane. But with that being the case, I need to get back to the actual story because I keep having these little side tangents where I'm just yapping. You know what I mean? But I digress. Continuing forward with the story. Once at said coffee shop, Deku would pretty much end up connecting to the internet as he would log in on a brand new laptop, and he would go on to pretty much respond to One For All, who would have ended up telling him that if he's willing to meet him at a certain location, telling him that he doesn't have to reveal his identity, and if he wants he can wear some sort of disguise. But Deku didn't really think that was necessary, not with somebody like All For One. But if somebody else is there to meet him, he definitely will be having to wear something. So I think that what Deku would most likely end up wearing is an all black outfit. Not all black, actually, no, I lied. Let me change it. He's going to be having like these combat boots. He's going to be having these cargo, like jogger, like black pants, and a hacker mask, the hitman looking mask. I don't know if the anonymous group mask. He's gonna be having one of those on, and the hoodie that he's wearing is gonna be having like bunny ears on it or something like that. I think that'd just be kind of cool. And it's gonna be like a dark green kind of like hoodie, you know what I mean? So that's the outfit that Deku's gonna be wearing. Kind of lame looking, but at the end of the day, it kind of has like that, like I'm like a little bit of a weirdo look, you know what I mean? But regardless, Kurogiri would be the one that would end up arriving in a mist form, as Izuku seeing him would say, you have some sort of teleportation quirk, I take it? As Kurogiri would tell him he does, and he would say he takes it he's the Phantom Killer, as Izuku would say, the one and only. As he would say, now I'd like to meet your boss if that's not too much of an inconvenience. As it'd be at this moment that, you know, Izuku would have Rika right next to him, and a big portal would be open, to which Deku would step right through it, and Rika would do so as well. After this happens, Izuku would find himself in a dark room, as Izuku would look around and just think to himself that this is so cliche. Suddenly, a couple of lights would begin turning on, and Izuku would see that there's a big chair at the end of said lights, as All For One would in a very chilling voice pretty much end up telling Kurogiri that he can leave now, as Kurogiri would end up leaving and Izuku would end up getting closer and closer to All For One. But as Izuku would get closer and closer, he would start to get a bit worried because of the fact that he had never been in such close contact with somebody who could actually kill him. And this guy is giving off the aura that could actually be the case. Izuku's never put himself in such a dangerous position where his, face and stuff like that could be found out. It'd be at this moment that Izuku would ask All For One what exactly this position entails and what the pay is. All For One would go on to explain that Izuku will get his pay after he kills All Might, or they take over Hero Society, whichever comes first. After this would be said, Izuku would turn towards All For One and ask him why he should trust him, considering the fact that he is a villain after all. As All For One would go on to say that he takes care of his friends, and he would then proceed to pretty much go on to tell Izuku that he could give him even more power than he already has. As Izuku would go on to ask what he's talking about, and All For One would go on to explain the backstory of quirks and how a long time ago someone was born who could actually have the power to steal and give quirks, and that someone was him, All For One. And Izuku, after hearing this, would go on to take off his mask, as he would take off his hood as well, showing his scruffy, curly green hair. As Izuku would say, "Where do I sign up?" And from here, All For One would grin underneath his mask, knowing that with him on his side, All Might doesn't stand a single chance. As All For One and Izuku would pretty much go on to explain some details. All For One explaining that he doesn't need him to serve as a lackey or be here all the time or even get accustomed with the crew. Going on to pretty much explain that the moment that he's needed, he'll contact him. As Izuku would be ready, and All For One would tell him that if he has another job, he's gonna have to put it on hold. With Izuku saying that first come, first serve, as you know, he'd pretty much end up telling him that this client, which is him, takes priority. And All For One would smile as both of them would look towards each other before Izuku puts his mask back on, and Kurogiri would teleport him out of there. It'd be at this point that Izuku would go on to just live normal life. Like, after this takes place, Izuku's not going crazy killing people or doing anything. This dude literally just proceeds to go to the gym and just pump iron and watch anime and just literally just chill. There's nothing else that he's doing. However, there is one thing that he is probably going to be investing at least a little bit of time, if we're being real. And that thing is essentially investing in some sort of I was about to say pro hero outfit, but Izuku isn't exactly a hero in this timeline, is he? No, he's going to be getting himself his own villain outfit. And I think that it's only fitting for Izuku to have that Yuta outfit. So that's the outfit that Izuku's going to be running with when it comes to his villain outfit. So after this would take place, we would essentially finally get the events of Ida, you know, and him being in the hospital because he got folded by Stain. Like, there's no other way around it. He gets absolutely bent over and gets belt to cheeks. Like, it's bad. This man could have died, but for the sake of the story, I mean, they already lost Aizawa. Let's just say that he doesn't die and he's hospitalized pretty badly, right? That's the worst thing that happened. So the students now are currently on the Forest training camp, and obviously with most of us who have seen the anime to the furthest point know that Yuga Aoyama is this traitor. And with that being the case, Yuga, much like at the USJ, would end up jamming the signal as nobody could contact anybody, and because in this specific timeline Aizawa's dead, that means that somebody had to step up and be the new homeroom teacher, and that someone was All Might. So unlike in the original where All Might wasn't at this camp, this time around he most definitely will be. And with the introduction of Muscular and all of these crazy villains plus Izuku, things are not exactly going to be easy for All Might. I can see All Might easily defeating Muscular, or you know, with some difficulty actually, but after defeating him and going through the forest and searching for the rest of his students, All Might would finally end up helping, you know, Todoroki against Moonfish, who was giving him heavy problems. He would end up saving Uraraka and Tsuyu from what's her name? Toga, right? Toga. And after that, we would pretty much get a scene in which All Might, after facing off against like 2 or 3 villains already, is now starting to get a little bit more tired. It'd be at this point that one of the students would actually be taken captive, and because unlike in the original they don't have access to Bakugo, and I don't see Tokiyami being too big of a bargaining chip, I'm gonna see Mr. Compress actually using Todoroki as one. And so holding him as hostage, out of nowhere a purple portal would open open, and stepping out of it would be Izuku Midoriya and All For One. As it'd be at this point in time that All For One would go on to pretty much tell All Might that he's glad he gets to see him again. As he would say, it's been a while. And from here, All Might would say, All For One, what are you doing here? You know, on some stereotypical anime like hero versus villain type timing. As All Might is just pissed. Like, this dude just took his student captive. He's the reason for his friend's death in Aizawa, even though they weren't the closest. They were both homeroom teachers. They spent time together, and Aizawa's never going to be an asset to the heroes ever again. A quirk like that only comes around every 100 years. Like, it's kind of the way that All Might would be thinking about things, right? So this would essentially end up leading to All Might and the Wild Pussycats staring down All For One, who would quickly use a wind quirk to blow them back, as All Might would be the only one standing face to face with All For One. Mind you, I did say Izuku would be there, but I'm going to be actually changing that, as All For One would end up, facing off against All Might, and once things would get difficult, All For One would end up pretty much telling All Might that he expected him to fight back, but not this much, as he would say he's glad he brought in extra insurance. And so another portal would open, as All For One would say, allow me to introduce you to the Phantom Killer, as All Might's eyes would go white, seeing that it's just a kid. It was just a kid this entire time doing that. As All Might, turning towards Izuku, would ask him if he's being forced to do this, and Izuku would stay silent, simply looking at All Might and smiling. But his smile would be strange, because Izuku's excited at the prospect of fighting All Might. And so, Izuku, turning towards Rika, would say, Rika, what about we show our friend your true form? As Rika would stop being a phantom, and All Might could see Rika standing behind Izuku, as both hands would be holding Izuku, and Izuku would smile, looking much like the one that we get in the thumbnail. From here, Izuku would wonder just how strong All Might was, as he would tell Rika to attack, but not to kill him. And so Rika would go over towards the direction of All Might, screeching with all of its might, as they would smack All Might, sending him crashing through a couple of trees, as All Might would get up weakly, and this dude would he was already weakened because he had fought against all those villains before, then he fought a bit against All For One, and now this dude just took a full blow from Rika. This ultimately leads Izuku to pretty much getting closer with All For One towards the direction of All Might, as All Might would be he looks defeated, and all he could do was just look up at Izuku and ask him why, as he would say, kid, I understand why All For One is doing this, but you're a kid with an incredible quirk. You could have been a hero. You could have saved lives. Why did you choose to be a villain? And his, heroic All Might tone. Half of his face is skeletal-like. Izuku, hearing this, would just kind of think about that, genuinely. He could have been a hero, but instead he decided to believe the lie that he couldn't be a hero anymore because he had killed people, and just decided to become a villain. That would tug at his heartstrings, because for the longest time Izuku has been thinking about that, and now his hero, his idol, was now standing in front of him, weakened. He had him on his knees at this point, and even now it just didn't feel like he was winning this fight for some reason. Something in Izuku just wasn't letting him kill All Might. But as this happened, Izuku would just stand over him, as All For One would tell Izuku that he wants to have the pleasure of ripping the life out of All Might, as All For One would begin charging up a gigantic attack in his arm, bigger than even the one that he would have used at the Camino Ward incident. And Izuku, seeing All For One doing this and looking at the eyes of All Might as he's just staring at him, just wondering why. Izuku in this moment would just think back to everything that he's done, as he would just say, damn it, Rika, I'm sorry. As in this moment, you would just see Rika's arm just kill All For One, as All For One couldn't even see Rika or thought that it was even gonna happen. But Izuku in one fell swoop would just kill All For One, and he would extend a hand out to All Might, as he would say, I'm sorry. It'd be at this point that All Might would weakly get up, as he would tell Izuku that he made the right choice, and that he's going to do everything he possibly can to make sure that his sentence is as light as it possibly could be. And so, right after this would happen, instead of Izuku going home with a massive millions of dollar reward that All For One could have potentially given him, Izuku finds himself in the back of a police car, as Izuku would see that, you know, All Might and all the rest of the pro heroes and stuff are cleaning everything up that he and all the League of Villains caused, and every single other League of Villains member got captured. Like, none of them escaped. Well, we could potentially say Kurogiri did, but without All For One there to like control the show, I just don't see the League of Villains going anywhere. And so Izuku would be thrown behind bars, as he would be confronted by All Might the next day, who would end up sitting behind glass and asking Izuku how exactly things got this way. Izuku goes on to explain his entire backstory to All Might, telling him that he didn't mean to, but this world, it broke him. And like a dog that's been backed into a corner, instead of laying down and taking it, he was sick of it. He fought back and he killed so many people. Izuku would then turn towards All Might, and you know, tears would start coming out. That small part of him that had been trying to like not do this would have finally broken out. And it's not like Izuku's the same innocent kid. No, like he's hard into that stuff. He's not just gonna instantly become the old Izuku and start crying. Like, he just feels bad, not because he killed those people, but more specifically because he knows he let Rika down. After this would end up taking place, Izuku, you know, has talks with All Might every now and then, like once a week, and All Might would be pleading and begging for Izuku's sentence to be lightened, saying that, you know, like the kid had hard times, and if he was a hero monitored under him, he could go on to save many lives instead of rotting away in jail. This ultimately leads the Hero Commission to coming up with an interesting idea, to use Izuku with his incredible skills to take out certain people that they don't want to come out to the limelight, much like Lady Nagant. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I'm going to be wrapping up What If Deku was Yuta's reincarnation, or had cursed energy, or whatever the heck I decided to title this video. I had a lot of fun making this, and for this being my first video back after like 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was, I think it's safe to say that it was an absolute banger. That being said, expect a What If Deku at Soul Leveling movie to come out sometime soon within the next 2 weeks. But with that being the case, ladies and gentlemen, slap a like on this video to help it do so much better in the algorithm. Leave a comment down below letting me know how you guys would have handled this scenario, and let me know what you guys thought. Did you guys like Villain Deku or not? But with that being the case, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.